Winston Churchill said, "We shape our buildings and thereafter they shape us." You exponentially increase your chances of success in anything that you do when you dedicate space to that activity. Hey, if I love to play the cello, but my cello is locked in the closet in its case, and I only have 5 minutes, you're not going to do it, right? 5 minutes is not enough. But if the cello is sitting there in a nice little alcove with some plants around in a chair and it's just got a dust cloth over it, if you have 5 minutes, you can take 2 steps, sit down, pull the cloth off, and do a few scales or play one song. And maybe it's not like it used to be, when you had more time and you used to play for an hour at a time. At least it's keeping the spark alive
I was
as
just
opposed
going
to
to
not
say,
doing it at all,
it's enough to
right?
turn that spark into a full-blown flame, and that'll fuel you through your day because you just did something that you love for 5 minutes.
That's right. That's exactly it. Every little step you take in the direction of your dreams or of your goals or the things that you love, the things that feed you, sets up a positive feedback loop. What it mirrors back to, you know what? My life is possible. The things that I love, the things that I value are achievable for me. That means we step into hope, we step into possibility, we step into potential. But to the extent that we can take control of shaping our space, we start to take control of our destiny and shape our futures. We want to do it intentionally.
Hi, friends. This is James and Karen. We are Kerouacs Cruising.
We are taking you on a journey, traveling the country with our dogs and finding remote places where the dog
And us
can roam free and play while we discuss life's growths, beauty, and some struggles along the way.
We recommend pairing our episodes with our blog at kerouacscruising.com, where we organize accurate information in an easy-to-follow format, removing all of the conversational goodies.
The link for this episode's blog post is in the show notes.
We encourage you to join the conversation by commenting where you listen, engaging with us on Facebook or Instagram at Kerouacs Cruising, or email us at join@kerouacscruising.com.
In the meantime, thanks for tuning in. Sit back and enjoy the journey.
Good morning, friends.
Hi, welcome to Kerouacs Cruising. Today we have a special guest, Talor Stewart, and he's bringing conscious home design to our podcast. And
Hey, everybody. We're really glad to be actually on the show as a guest. I was quite surprised actually that you invited me here because I'm an architect about building a home and putting down roots, and here you are living this on the road adventure. And so I think we're going to have a fun time today, and also keep it relevant for the listeners, because um, even if you're living, in a motorhome or a van or your RV or you have a truck and a trailer, a camper that you're towing around, there are little things you can do to just be a little bit more mindful about your space, and that's important. The smaller your footprint, the more sort of intentional you have to be to set things up to know where things are so you can find it, to keep things minimal so you avoid clutter and all sorts of stuff, but that just make life reduce friction and increase the flow. So we're going to share some of those, but also beyond those practical things, I have some information based on big data from scientific research of things that actually help people live longer and happier lives, if you can believe that, statistically speaking. And so, and you can do that anywhere, whether you're in an apartment or you're, in a home or whether you're on the road. And so, I'll definitely share that so that everyone listening, no matter where they are in the world or where they are in their journey, they can take this information and put it to work. And also, how many people will be on the road permanently, as people make the transition and say, it's time for me to put down roots for whatever reason. um, you know th- Understanding a little bit about how our environment plays a role in shaping our futures. If you have some knowledge, then you can more um, uh, clearly, sort of evaluate choices that you have and say, oh, there's this option, there's this option, there's this option. How do you know which one is really going to serve you in the long run? So I'm going to share some knowledge that is really like an essential life skill, like just like knowing how to prepare a well-balanced meal or dress for the occasion or dress for the weather. You want to know how the environment impacts you so that you can um, make make better choices. Yeah. So that's the opportunity here, and I'm just so appreciative that you have had me on your show.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. I just a little bit that we started reading it, I started, like, triggering so many ideas of how we can improve our mobile life on a daily basis, so I deeply appreciate it.
I have done a lot of road tripping, lots of adventures back and forth across the country, um, possibly a couple dozen times. I've been to every state but Alaska so far, and just camped out in many national forests, many fairs and festivals and shows and, people's backyards and all sorts of, all sorts of shenanigans. And really love the freedom and how every day is new and spontaneous. And those are two of the things that over time can be very difficult to stay on top of is regular meals, healthy, nutritious meals, because when you're on the road, it's like, boy, I just do not want to do another truck stop, dinner. That gets old fast, right? So I actually used to travel. This is before the before the internet. I used to travel around with this book called "The Tofu Toll Booth," which was written by a folk singer, Dar Williams, a Vermonter. I'm in Vermont today. We're talking and it was basically a list of health food stores in the country. The criteria to get in her book was that they had to sell organic produce, because I found that sometimes you look up health food stores, in the phone book or whatever, this, back in the early 90s, and you'd end up going out to some place in the middle of Ohio, and it was just a pills and powders store,
Oh,
like
yeah.
a GNC
Experienced that.
Yeah.
nutritional thing. It was, and that was listed as health foods. So all those were filtered out, and she had it. Do they have pet food? Do they have like a deli so you can get food ready to eat right there? And it was all these categories. It was wonderful. And so, that was one way that I helped support my diet was to just every time I pulled into a new town, it was like, okay, where's the health food store? And and then usually where there's good food, there's good people. And so, I could like look around for a friendly face and say, "Hey, I'm passing through town. Where's a good place to camp? Or is there anything neat to do to go hiking around? I want to do something different, and see the area." And people will give you the inside scoop. So, um, and that can give you some chance for exercise too, to go hiking or camping and do some little day excursions and stuff without putting some effort into it and making it an intentional part of your routine. Because there are a bunch of people that are road tripping and they're just cruising in their motorhomes from Walmart to Walmart, as across the country. Yeah. And so that's a different type of nomadic lifestyle that may or may not, serve all of your all of your needs. It's not just a need for adventure, but like you said, you want to stay healthy. You want to be able to have time to feed your body and stay good because, well, life is about joy. Life is about living it, right? We wrote it into the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Yeah. So,
Amen to that.
that's the whole thing in a nutshell right there. Let's be happy.
I love that. I love that.
It's so true. So I've just one question that has stuck with me, and I really hope everybody buys his book, Conscious Home Design. Give us an example of friction points in a home, in a camper, in space.
That's super common, yeah.
That's super common.
Yeah.
I would
Right.
imagine everybody's friction points could be different because we're all different humans.
Sure. Well, yes, that's true. There's plenty of room for individuality within the world of friction, but there are also some universal friction points. And so and these are true whether it's an RV or a home that we built, a brick and mortar home. Two extremely high friction points are bathrooms and entry areas, entry vestibules, the foyer. And so, we could talk about entries for starters. Um, it's a transition between, outside, public, not safe or dirty or noisy or all, everything that the big wide world is, to inside, safe, clean, sanctuary, peaceful, private, secure, all of those things, right? And so the transition between inside and outside um, we see it in so many, um, cases where they have sort of like a vestibule or an airlock. Think about if they're on a submarine or if they're in space, it's like there's this airlock where they need a buffer zone between outside and inside. Those are extreme examples because, obviously space or in the ocean, it's totally inhospitable for us. But it illustrates the point, that we can benefit from understanding a little bit more about how we transition from, public to private space. And so, I liken it to where, and this for some reason when I'm on the road and you're living in an RV, I
There you
don't
go.
feel it as keenly as I do when I'm living in a brick and mortar house, but think about a big giant, Boeing 747 airplane coming in for a landing, right? The thing is moving at whatever it is, 100 miles an hour, and the ground, relative to the ground, the tires that just came down, the landing gear, they're not spinning at all. They're still, they're just. And so when the plane actually touches ground, you see the tires screech and smoke and, and they burn a bunch of rubber off, as they try to very quickly synchronize their speeds between the ground and the plane. And so I feel like sometimes when I come home, if I've been rushing around trying to beat traffic or just, get to the house or whatever, I feel like I'm that airplane coming in for a landing and I come in with a flurry, a burst of energy. It's like the tires screeching. And it's so nice if you have a buffer zone to absorb that shock, of this whirlwind of energy coming home into the house. But energetically speaking aside, let's just talk about practicality, right? So you can come to the door and you may have boots, jackets, umbrella hats, gloves, whatever gear for the weather you may have, and so you may have to take that off, need a place to hang your coat or take off your shoes. You might, cell phone, keys, whatever things you've got in your hands or your pockets. You may have bag of groceries, and handbags and things that need to be um, put down so that you can, take off your shoes or do the other things. It's like it's an inherently high friction zone, not just because it's a transition, but because it's typically a small space. Even in a home, like we don't make the entry foyer very big. It's not like a big room. It's a little bit more than a closet, and you may have multiple people in there at the same time, all trying to put things down and make the transition from outside to inside. And so it can be a little bustly in there and it can be cluttered. It can become cluttered if you don't have the systems in place to store the things or to have the place to put down, your keys and the bag while you take off your hat and your shoes kind of thing. And so um, I find that even in homes, especially homes that don't have a large enough space for how many people are using it, then time is spent, especially people, raising kids or whatever, but you're spending time nagging the people you live with, hey, put this thing away, you left this thing out or whatever. And it's like it's not that they're lazy, it's just that there wasn't a good place for it, oftentimes, it's like, sure, okay, maybe the kid just left their jacket on the floor and they know there's a hook there for them. And they were just lazy or they were focused on something else, they weren't paying attention. But, once the habit is established, the routine is there, if you have space that's size appropriate and with the right types of sensitivity to so that everything has a place when you go there, it helps keep the space more organized and clutter free. And that means the time you have to interact with the people you live with is spent on more positive things rather than nagging each other about keeping the space clean. And so it sows harmony in your life and in your relationships and in your home just by having the house support you so that you're not, cleaning it all the time or griping at someone else for them to clean it, and nobody wants to do that. That's not fun. That's not happiness. Right? So, yeah, and bathroom is the same thing for similar reasons, because the bathroom is an inherently small space with a lot of paraphernalia. You got your toothbrush and all your body care products and stuff there, and if it's being shared by multiple people, then you got twice as many things because we don't share the same hairbrush, we don't share the same toothbrush, we all have our own stuff, and so you have all these different moving parts that are supposed to stay in a very small space. How do you do that without it feeling cluttered and chaotic, right? And so it takes careful planning and almost a little bit of work because you can say, "Oh, well, it looks great when I have one bottle of shampoo." But the issue is that, as that bottle gets low and there's only like 2 inches left, you're like, "Oh, we're running out of shampoo. Oh, it's on sale. Let's get this." And you bring a new bottle in. And then what happens is you start using that new bottle, maybe because it's a different flavor, a different scent, and you're tired of the old one by now. So you want to try it out. But even if you don't, the old one, you still got a few weeks left of shampoo in there, and so now you have 2 bottles of shampoo, and things slowly clutter up. It never is the case where it's like a hotel where there's just 1 shampoo and 1 lotion and 1 soap, and it's just so minimalistic, right? That's not that works for a minute, but you can't maintain a daily life like that, not without discipline, and effort, yeah? And so, um just understanding those, realities and being able to sort of plan the space, can help you, reduce those friction points. Yeah. So those are 2 examples of high friction zones.
They make total sense to me,
Yeah.
and I believe they are high friction. I will just give a quick example. We've been living in the camper now for, I think, since June anyways, however long that is, and it's 6
Nice.
months, I guess, and the bathroom is a huge friction point because if we're both trying to get ready, there's no room in there for us to both get in. So it does cause friction. And like when I take a shower, I like to have the whole bathroom to myself. And she needs to squeeze in for this, that. And I'm like, please get out of the
Yeah,
bathroom. So
right.
definitely a great point. And I never realized it as a friction point till I was really reading your book. And I was like, I guess that is a friction point because sometimes don't get mad, but I can feel
It
friction.
builds up resentment, right, in a
Yeah.
household, and it's something that's avoidable, and I love that you touch on there's a million of them you touch on in your book, and these are just, a couple of examples, and that's really great.
Yeah. So yeah, sure. So if you're noticing a friction point that doesn't have a great solution, like you're not in a house with a master bathroom that's big enough for 2 people, so that one person could be at the sink or on the toilet while the other one is, in the shower or whatever, right? So if you're finding that it's a friction thing, then that just comes down to communication and routines and taking turns. Hey, I would like to go into the shower. It's going to take me 20 minutes. Do you have to pee before I go in there, or is there something that you want to grab? So that you can, if you want to grab your toothbrush, you can maybe use the kitchen sink, that kind of thing, or whatever. And so just a little bit of communication and synchronizing your routines can help solve that problem. Yeah.
I
So,
love that
but
you just said
if
that.
you're just
I just jumped in and interrupted you, but I love that you said the kitchen
okay,
sink for brushing your teeth because up and until we built our tiny house, I don't know, I just had this like mental you brush your teeth at the bathroom sink. There were no other options, there were no other questions. And then when we were building our house for a long time, the only sink we had was our kitchen sink. So we were brushing our teeth at our kitchen sink. So then when we built the bathroom and the plumbing was all finished and everything, and we started using the normal sink, it was natural that one of us would just pull away while, if we're both brushing our teeth at the same time and use that kitchen sink. And we still do it now, but it's just funny because it's like we just sometimes get in our box of how things are supposed to work. And if you start just kind of thinking outside the box of the standard of living, things can loosen up and get a lot easier and create more flow in your life. So I love that you brought that up.
sure, sure. Well, my mom used to wash her hair in the kitchen sink. I remember sometimes as a kid, because it was big enough, she could bend over and get her head under the faucet, to get it wet, And so she would just do a quick little thing like that. I guess from a young age, I thought, well, hey, that it's there. I mean, nobody wants to have toothpaste and spit glob uh, on this kitchen sink. It's not. It's like, hey, that's my food and everything. So if you're using it, if your sink is doing double duty, then you have to be mindful about keeping it clean too, right? So it does give you extra work. It's kind of like the hip bone is connected to the leg bone, right? So it removes a friction point over here, but it doesn't erase it. It just transfers it and it looks different now. It's like, oh, okay, now yes, I can use the kitchen sink, but now I have to take a little extra time to clean it, because if I see a little blob of toothpaste that fell in the bathroom sink, it's annoying, but it doesn't really gross me out. But if you see it in the kitchen sink, it's like, what the heck? What is this doing here?
Valid
Did
point. Valid point.
association with it, you know?
I love that.
So we've talked about friction points. A little bit of other things that I was reading in your book that I was definitely interested in was setting up the bedroom for sleep and intimacy. And what kind of porn is, I will tell you, I slept a lot better at home than I do in the camper. What are some of the things, like we have dim lights in our bedroom? I was thinking I had to ground my camper so I could have a grounded bed.
There are a lot of factors, that influence the quality of our sleep, right? So, um, light is one, so if you happen to be, parking lot camping, um, there's gonna be disturbances, there's just no way around that. It's out of your control. So if you're very sensitive, um, try an eye mask, that you can wear, over your eyes so that it's dark out, and earplugs, I remember I was working on a project that required me to be on site, and it was not a peaceful place. It was extremely noisy. And so I slept with earplugs in, little foam things that I inserted every night. And it was slightly uncomfortable at first, but quickly, within a few days, within a few nights, got used to the feeling and not a big deal. And so, and also an eye mask. And so those can help reduce the sensory inputs, for sleep. So that can help a lot. Um, Also, staying hydrated. Nobody wants to chug a bottle of water before bed and then have to get up 2 times and go pee in the middle of the night. That can disturb your sleep. But if throughout the day, if you're staying hydrated enough to where you don't need to drink a glass of water right before bed, that your body is hydrated, then that can help sleep as well. Especially waking up. If you wake up super groggy and confused, and it's likely due to dehydration, So I keep water by the bed, and the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning is chug. It helps reanimate the body, reactivate it, and I find immediately, not only does the body feel more energized, but also my brain starts to do well, do better, the clarity, it turns on. So water, not tea or coffee or anything, just wait, just chug water first. And then the other thing is, especially if you're in a tight space like a camper, is the air quality. Like you're going to burn up the oxygen, especially two people in a small space. If you've got all the windows shut and the doors closed because it feels safer to have everything, closed up like that, then you're going to consume the oxygen, and it's going to have a lower oxygen ratio. And so, you're not going to suffocate, not unless you have some sort of wood burning stove or something that's literally burning it up. And people do expire from that people die in their sleep from the CO2 buildup, because the fire burns up all the oxygen that they need to breathe. So you need to be safe. You need to have makeup air, right? You need to have fresh supply of air equal to the amount of air that's being consumed. And so breathing, and even in a house, even in a smaller sized bedroom, 10 feet by 12 feet, two people it'll feel stuffy in there by the time morning comes. You'll have burned up enough of the fresh air from two people breathing through the night that it'll feel like, oh, we need to, ventilate, right? So ventilation is very, very important. And you know, um, if it's noisy outside or it's cold, you don't want to open the window in your camper, but you really need to keep that air, unless you have a mechanical ventilator somehow, that pipes in, filters and blows in outside air through a vent. Then that can work. But very few mobile, motorhomes and campers have that kind of technology in place. It's really just so much easier to crack a window or crack 2 windows so you get cross ventilation. So those are the things that I would focus on the most is eye patch and earplugs, eye mask and earplugs to reduce sensory input, staying hydrated, and making sure that you have ample supply of fresh air. Those things can help you sleep. All those things can help sleep go more deeply. And these things, we spend, you know, what how much of a lot of our life sleeping, and so it's really important to get good rest because it's going to help the body, repair, help the mind repair. It reduces stress, both physical and mental stress, to have good quality sleep, and especially over time. We can all struggle through a period. Oh, I was on vacation for a week, but I was at the in-laws' house and I don't like their bed, or it's you can have a week of no rest, and sure, you'd be a little grumpy and everything, but you can get through it. You can pull yourself up by the bootstraps and get through that. But if it's chronic, if you're going through years of not good sleep, that can really weigh on our happiness, right? And so, in conscious home design, I'm looking for the um, opportunities to create a safe and nurturing nest so that you can sleep and recharge and get that, because it does play a big factor in our long-term health and happiness. Yeah. Do those thoughts, how do you respond to those ideas, those suggestions? Does
The
that
biggest
resonate with you, or is there something else we can keep exploring?
No, them and, I think because we really camp, and this is for our audience, but we camp in the middle of the woods, so it's quiet and dark. The biggest thing that you brought
Yeah.
to the table is the oxygen supply, and I
Mm,
worked in the restaurant business my whole life, and we had makeup air in the restaurants. I never really thought of it
sure.
for a camper, but that's a great point.
Yeah.
Is, having
Yeah.
makeup air. When you design a house for somebody, do you recommend having makeup air throughout the whole house, not necessarily just the kitchen or where the furnace is?
Yeah. So the code requires a certain amount of makeup air. So you can have your HVAC system, which is heating, ventilating, air conditioning, HVAC, and code now says, you have to have 20% makeup air, put into that. So does everyone do that? It's because there's different codes in different places, different towns or different states rather adopt different codes to work with. It's not a universal code. There are universal codes, but they're not universally adopted. Yes. So, we have the International Building Code, International Residential Code, but not all states are using those standards. And what people get away with in their own homes is a lot different. People are oftentimes, especially in um, some sort of right to homestead states, like Vermont, and Texas. There are some states that really allow, the building people say, look, if you want to chop down trees and live in a log cabin with no plumbing and no electricity, you can, go ahead and do that for you. And I support those initiatives. The challenge is, it's fine if you're doing it for yourself, but now suddenly, if you're raising a family and you got kids, you're subjecting others that you're responsible to subcode conditions, and that's, there's a little bit of an ethical challenge there. But at the end of the day, it's I think people are trying to do their best. Yeah. And so it's, except in extreme cases, I think people should be allowed to do it. But a challenge is that, if they then go and sell the house, try to sell that homestead to somebody, well, banks won't touch it, so you have to look for a cash buyer. But the person that buys it, they didn't build it, so they might not know all those details. And they're probably not an architect, so they don't know what the code is supposed to say. And so there can be challenges like that. So it's nice when things are by the code. Anyway, you do need to have makeup air in the home. It's more strictly enforced in commercial, environments now. It's energy inefficient to bring in outside air because the temperature difference, right, or the humidity difference. At the very least, you need filters in place to take out dust and pollen and stuff. That's not, changing filters, seasonally is not too expensive. If you remember to do it, you got to do that. It's a maintenance thing. But if it's 100 degrees outside, or 0 degrees outside, and inside is somewhere between 65 and 70, depending on this time of year, where you want to keep the thermostat. Um, then, every time you bring in fresh air, you're bringing in something that needs to either be heated or cooled. And so that uses up a lot of energy. And if you're trying to keep your bills low and keep your footprint low and trying to be efficient, then you're going to find yourself, avoiding doing that and keeping things locked up tight. And that's when the problem happens. It was a big problem in the 80s, because if you remember in the 1970s, we had energy crisis, right? We had problems. People were lined up around the block just to get gasoline for their cars. Things were being rationed out, and so prior to that time, it was like, wow, petroleum, man, this stuff is abundant. We had 20 years of like use as much as you want, and so all the buildings that were designed and built from the 40s to 1970, basically, didn't have much insulation. They weren't very energy efficient. There was no concern for that. It was, it was abundant to build. But then we had the energy crisis, and at the same time, technology came where we started really leaning heavily on foams and insulation types. And so we started sealing up buildings, like I remember, brand new home in the 80s, some homes you could go in and shut the front door and you'd feel your ears your ears would almost pop. You'd feel pressure, it was that tight, it was like the thing was like, sealed up like a, you know, like a Tupperware, container or something. So with that kind of a tight house, what happened was, because there's all this off gassing from everything, the furniture and the glues on the carpet backing and the building materials and the paints and then just people living there breathing and fumes from cooking, or you burnt the toast or whatever, pets, and everything just builds up. And they found that indoor air quality was 3 to 5 times worse than outside air, and they started calling it sick building syndrome. And so, it was a real problem in the architectural world, and architects, basically unilaterally got together and said, how do we solve this? And so the codes were rewritten and changed. And now, we started focusing on, what levels of toxic chemicals, were allowed to be put. We started saying, well, we're not allowed to use formaldehydes anymore unless it's a certain small amount and it has time to off gas before you put it in, and whatever. Certain standards were put in place, and that they've been evolving for the past several decades. So now, we do makeup air. So in a home, right, what we have is a device called an ERV, an energy recovery ventilator. And it is essentially a fan with a tube, like a sleeved tube. There's a smaller diameter tube inside of a larger diameter tube, and incoming air goes through one of the tubes, and outgoing air goes through the other tube. And so they don't actually mingle, but they have contact through the surface of the tube, so that the incoming air is going to adjust to the temperature of the outgoing air before it comes in. And so and you still have to filter it, to remove dusts and pollens and things, but it's now fresh air, because it's air that has benefited from nature's state of ultraviolet purification from the sun and oxygenation from, just the environment of at the world at large. And so you're getting that fresh air, that oxygenated and UV purified air coming in, that's pre-warmed or pre-cooled by the outgoing air. And so energy recovery ventilators are something that not everyone does, because it's an added expense. They're not super expensive, a couple $1,000s, and which is not a lot if you're building a $400,000 home. But on the other hand, construction is expensive, and you'll find that if you have $400,000 budget for a home, you'll be like, oh man, I really wish I had 500, because there's other things you want to do. And so it can feel like it's not quite enough budget to build. And so that can be a cost saving measure that people take, is not doing the ERV. And so to be conscious about it. You want to say, well, what is our lifestyle? How many times are we opening the door? What kind of air exchange rate are we getting? And are we going to keep windows open and cracked? So um, it's just something to be aware of. There are things that we can do intentionally, but yes, even in the home, even in larger spaces, you need to have the makeup air. I mean, think about when you go to the ocean, and you breathe that super dense, oxygen-rich, brine, that's there. Or even if you're up in Colorado, if you're up in the mountains, and the air is thinner, there's actually a little bit less oxygen, but somehow you take a deep breath and wow, man, you can almost feel tingles
Change your
sometimes.
Yeah, yeah,
Like your body responds to that fresh air, yeah?
yeah, yeah.
And so that invigoration that we feel from good quality air, what would it be like if the air in your home was like that? And, particularly in places where you're gonna be spending a lot of time, like the bedroom where you're sleeping, or like a home office where you're gonna be spending hours a day. Like if you're spending a lot of time in these zones, having them well oxygenated, having them have really good air quality is gonna help you um, stay more alert, stay more energized. And when you're sleeping, you're thinking, "Hey, I don't want to be alert. I don't want to be energized." But you don't want to make the body work harder than it has to breathe and get the air that it needs. So, bedrooms and home offices are two zones that I really want to focus on for indoor air quality.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. I love that, and I love that you and you say it in your book that it's not again, I think we've touched on it already, it's not just in architecture, it's not just, starting from scratch. A lot of your methods that you bring out in your books and what you've just listed off are a lot of things that you can do even afterwards when you're living in an apartment in any situation. You really take a holistic approach. I mean, everywhere you just went is talking so much more than about the structure of your home. So much of it is, taking a little bit of extra time up front to make your whole life better, your whole life easier, your whole life flow, your whole life, um, just really work good for you.
Yeah. Um, I'm a big fan of plants as well in the home, right? So, NASA did a study. I have a PDF on my website that's a free download. The 5 best plants for indoor air quality. Because NASA was like, "Hey, can we put some plants in our spaceships or or whatever?" And because you can't just open the window, you can't crack a window in space. And so, I mean, I don't think they're putting a lot of plants in space now, but it was they were doing studies, for long term, habitation and capsules and stuff. And so the NASA Clean Air Study. Anyway, I took the 5 best plants, and listed them on a PDF infographic,
Mhm.
free download on my website. But I think, and they were saying like one plant, one medium sized plant per 100 square feet of living space. So get a couple of plants in each room or more. But, can you rely on that to clean your air? Not really. I mean, it's not really enough to clean your air. It's not like, I happen to live in Vermont, so all I have to do is open the window, and in 5 minutes, I've got all the fresh air I could possibly need. My problem is dust and pollen coming in. Anyway, plants are good because not only are they going to, perhaps provide some air quality benefits, but physiologically, well, this. I mean, if you're in van life, you don't need to worry about it because you're seeing plants all the time. You're going out, but in the home where people are more isolated from nature, that you're sort of in your little bubble, sort of separated off. Um, when we look at green growing things, it actually has a calming effect on the mind, and physiologically, the heart rate has been shown to rest. The breathing has more deep and more regular, and so reduces blood pressure. Conversely, you could look at a cityscape, and you may think, oh, it's really beautiful to look at, but it doesn't have the same physiological response. Biologically, our bodies like looking at green growing things. And so if you put those in your home, it can also help help it feel like a garden. Help your body feel like it's in its natural habitat, the one that it evolved in for, however many millions of of years, right? Like the city is a relatively new thing in the evolution of the human species. So our bodies haven't adapted to that. You may intellectually you may think, oh, I love the city, but physically you love the nature.
Yeah.
That's the truth. When we get out into nature, calm
Yeah.
is the result. Yeah,
Yeah.
near the
I
end. So
totally agree with
sort of
that. My
bring
blood
that in.
pressure and everything goes up in the city versus I grew up rurally most of my life, except when I was until 10, I lived in Lowell, Massachusetts. But after 10, we lived rurally. And we just did something and somebody said, would you rather live in the city or rurally? I would choose rurally every time because of the calming effect.
Sure. Yeah, it's certainly more peaceful in the country. There's less people, so there's less competition for, the road. Fewer people, fewer cars, all sorts of stuff. It may not be as exciting, in terms of choices of things to do, as much cultural stuff, opportunities. So, um, you have to sort of change how you engage with life and how you get enjoyment there. But it can certainly be um, more peaceful for you, if you have the temperament for it. I was looking at data. I was saying, do people, because it's much more stressful in the city, the air quality is generally worse. There's a lot more buzz just from the electricity of everything and everyone going on. I wanted to look and say, well, life expectancy should be higher in the country compared to the city, because of that. And there isn't really good data to support that. And it turns out, I think the reason the numbers are skewed that don't say, "Hey, people who live in the country live 5 years longer." I think you might find that, but the difference is that people that live in a more populated area have better access to healthcare. They're closer to a hospital, and I think the rural areas, um, you know, lose out on average life expectancies because of that one single data point. I'm not a population scientist, so there's probably an anthropologist. There's probably more data points in that, but I think that's one of the biggest factors
Yeah.
involved in it is access to healthcare. Quick response. Like how quickly can the ambulance get there and save your life, kind of a thing. So,
Right.
but yeah, I think it is a more peaceful, potentially a more healthy lifestyle if you're experiencing more of nature. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, most people aren't going to hire an architect in their life. Most people are going to do the best they can with the walls they find, that they move into. It's just more efficient. It's more expedient to just move into a place that's already built.
Yeah.
If someone was going to build a home from the ground up, it's really an amazing opportunity to create your future.
Yeah.
Winston Churchill said, "We shape our buildings, and thereafter they shape us." And so when you can shape it in a way that's going to support your lifestyle activities, like if you say, "Hey, I like to do, like, what do you like to do for creative expression, for creative activity?" Like we all have a creative spark, but one person, they like to play a musical instrument. Another person, they like to journal and do creative writing. Another person might want to do um, painting or some other art. Another person, they might do podcasting, like what we're doing now. There's so many ways that creativity shows up, and whether others benefit from your creativity or it's just for yourself, it's a hobby, we all have that need to be creative. And so if you know that, what you like to do for creative expression, then we can create space, opportunity for you to have that in your home. But if you haven't thought about it, the quality of your questions determines the quality of your answers. And so if you don't ask yourself the question, what do I like to do for creative expression? Then you might not take the time to dedicate space to that pursuit in your home. And then your home is not supporting you in doing that activity. The most famous painting in the world, Leonardo da Vinci painted the Mona Lisa. Everyone's heard of the Mona Lisa or seen the image, yeah? So it turns out that it took him more than 10 years, took him more than a decade to paint that. Now, that to me grandly illustrates the point that architecture is really responsible for all of our great human achievements, whether they're arts, whether they're science, whether they're medicine, whether they're technology, without the ability to dedicate space and control your environment, for a certain focused pursuit, you wouldn't be able to do anything that took longer than a sunny afternoon, because as soon as the weather changed or a wild animal came, or, hostile tribe neighbors came by, it would mess everything up. So the ability to dedicate space to an activity allows us to build on yesterday's achievements. You can do something that takes longer than one day to do. And so, um, if your office is your dining room table, then every time you want to eat, you got to break down the put all away the papers and the computer, and clean up and set the table for dinner. And it's a friction. It's a friction. It's inherently, it embodies a lot of friction. Whereas if you have a dedicated office, you can leave your paperwork out, and then just step into it, at another time, right? So it removes friction, and it also saves you time. You no longer have the time to breaking down and setting up every day before you use it. So that's another extra 10 or 15 minutes of potentially productive time. Yeah. And so that doesn't seem like a lot, but it adds up over years. Yeah. And also just the mental energy and the willpower. We only have a certain amount of effort that we can put into something. And so if we can simplify it and create flow in our lives, then it saves our resources. You can put your willpower into focusing on the task at hand rather than cleaning up the mess, so that you can then do your work. You know what I mean? It's like, so
I know what
when you have, yeah,
it's the
right,
story of my life.
sure, of course, it's the story of everyone's life,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
You exponentially increase your chances of success in anything that you do when you dedicate space to that activity.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine your camper, imagine, 100 years ago, campers didn't have bathrooms. That's inconvenient, you know, right? It's like, your hygiene takes a dive
Yeah,
under those conditions, right? 200 years ago, there was no refrigeration.
yeah.
Nutrition. 200 years ago, no plumbing, no electricity, no refrigeration. It's like, yeah, everyone died at 60 years old. Not everyone. There's a few outliers, right? But average life expectancies were low, much lower. And so, when we dedicate space for kitchens and bathrooms, our life expectancy increases. Yeah. But the thing here, but that's just the basic level. Abraham Maslow, you know, the hierarchy of human needs pyramid, he said that, look, we're more than just animals. You got to give people more than just shelter and food and a place to sleep. That'll keep them alive, but it won't keep them happy. They won't feel like they're enriched, like they have a beautiful, wonderful, well-rounded life. Yeah. And so, universally speaking, regardless of how old you are, or your background, or your culture, or where you are on the planet, this is a human issue, is that we have higher needs. We have needs for love and connection and belonging. We have needs for personal development. We want to feel like we're growing, like we're accomplished at something, like we're good, like we're adept at something, anything. We just need to feel like we've accomplished something, and that we're also growing and expanding into more and more of our potential. We also have needs for creative expression, right? All of us is a spark. All of us has our own little engine, yeah, going, and we want, however that shows up, we want to, foster that, um, nurture, that spark, and keep it alive, right? So, our higher needs also need to be supported to have a happy life. And so, if you have the opportunity to actually shape your home, then you can start carving off little spaces for these different, hey, what do I like to do for personal development? What do I like to do for creative expression? How do I like to, move my body? What are my choices here? And so you can start dedicating zones in your home for each one of those things to remove the friction point. You say, hey, if I love to play the cello, but my cello is locked in the closet in its case, and I only have 5 minutes because I'm pressed for time getting out the door this morning, or whatever it is, um, you're not going to do it, right? 5 minutes is not enough. But if the cello is sitting there in a nice little alcove, with some plants around in a chair, and it's just got a dust cloth over it, if you have 5 minutes, you can take 2 steps, sit down, pull the cloth off, and do a few scales or play one song. And maybe it's not like it used to be, when you had more time and you used to play for an hour at a time, when you were more serious about it. but at least 5 minutes is 5 minutes. I mean, at least it's keeping the spark alive
I was
as
just
opposed
gonna
to
say
not doing it at all,
it's enough to
right?
turn that spark into a full-blown flame, and that'll fuel you through your day because you just did something that you love for 5 minutes. I love that. That's a beautiful thought.
That's right. That's exactly it. Every little step you take in the direction of your dreams or of your goals or the things that you love, the things that feed you, sets up a positive feedback loop. What it mirrors back to, you know what? My life is possible. The things that I love, the things that I value are achievable for me. That means we step into hope, we step into possibility, we step into potential, as opposed to saying, you know what, I want to do this, but I can't. The environment won't let me. Then the world starts to close in on you. You start to feel frustrated, like and in the worst case scenario, hopeless and depressed. It's like, oh, life isn't working for me. There's things that I love to do, but I can't do them. That's all of us have had frustrations like that. That's the truth. That's part of life. There's is because the world is imperfect. We don't have full control over our reality. But to the extent that we can take control of shaping our space, we start to take control of our destiny and shape our futures. We want to do it intentionally. So that's what conscious home design is about. And we meet you where you are, whether you're building a brand new home from the ground up or you're just renting an apartment somewhere. There are things you can do to dedicate space, to shift your awareness about how we lay out our space and arrange it that can serve us, so that our environment, our home can be more supportive. Yeah.
I love that.
So
I feel so inspired
mhm.
just in that. You mentioned building from the ground up or an apartment, but again, there's so many tidbits of golden and just out of this conversation, even from your book to our conversation, so much golden information that it's like we can incorporate this into our lives and we can be more conscious about things. And I definitely want you to talk on it because I tell you what, I chase sunshine. Like that is my sole purpose in life. I feel like nowadays, especially in the winter months. But how we can be conscious about when you are looking for an apartment, if that's the situation you're in, or you are house shopping, being conscious about setting yourself up for success for the things you like to do. Like you said, if you like to go for a run, you of course want to make sure you're by running trails. If you like to exercise, like James loves to run up mountains. And so whenever we camp somewhere, he is looking for there to be a major hill or mountain close by that he can practice keeping himself in shape in that way. So I feel like doing that kind of planning up front, no matter what your kind of lifestyle is, can really help set you up for that overall success.
100%, 100%, Kara. I wrote the book Conscious Home Design. You know, I figured who wants to read a book about architecture? Only other architects. This is going to be boring, right? So I spent a lot of time crafting it and curating it so that it would be accessible, so that anyone could read it with zero experience. They might not know the difference between one wall and another. And yet I wanted someone to be able to read it and immediately get value out of it. I don't speak a lot of jargon or technical stuff in there. It's very accessible. You can read it in an hour, right? And it just lays these big ideas, they're scientific principles, right? This is not about style or aesthetic preference or anything like that. Um, it's about the things that actually move the needle in terms of us living a full, rich life. And then from the book, I worked with someone who was a licensed psychotherapist and also had a master's in social work, so double masters. And she read the book, and together we worked to create a workbook with exercises and worksheets where remember what I said before. The quality of your question determines the quality of your results. I think everyone, when they're shopping for a home, whether they're going to build it themselves or get something that's already on the market, that's pre-built, they have their list. They have their wish list. Oh, I want to have this and this X, Y, and the other thing. And the thing is, I want to make sure that um, we leave no stone unturned. And there's probably questions you didn't even know to ask yourself. They're not even on there. And so, but because I live and breathe in this world, not just architecture and design, but architecture to support human excellence, human happiness. Um, I've really integrated that. So you go through the workbook and it will ask you the good questions, and when you get to the end of it, you'll have a list that's like, oh my God, this is better than I thought. This is better than I imagined. I had my dream home, but this is even better.
Next level. Yeah.
right? And so the beautiful thing about conscious home design is it does not require, that you have more money. It's not more expensive to do conscious home design. Whatever size footprint you can afford, whatever square footage your budget will allow you to maintain, to build and maintain. It's just about how we arrange and plan for the space, for that space. It's about the way you utilize the space you have. So, yeah, it's really accessible. I think, anyone, whether they're looking to just rent or build or whatever, can benefit from just taking a gander at the conscious home design principles, and then doing a few of the exercise worksheets and say, how could this show up in my life, in my unique situation? What's best for me? What's best for the people I love and live with? Yeah. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for helping me, share this message with people. It's really my dharma. This is my life's path, my life's work. It's one of the big ways that I provide value to the world. And so, if you don't mind, I'll just say people can get instant downloadable digital copy on my website, conscioushomedesign.com.
Beautiful.
Also, you can get a physical copy if you want a hardcover book, and you want to hold it in your hand and read it and have something for the library to put in your library, or to give as a gift to someone. You can also get a
On your website, right? ConsciousHomeDesign.com.
conscioushomedesign.com. Yeah, you can get a digital copy for instant download. There's actually the book and an audio book as well. It's a bundle, it's a package. You get the book, the workbook, and audiobook as an instant digital download. And if you buy a physical version, you'll also get the digital copy as well for instant download. So you don't have to wait to start consuming the information, while it arrives in the mail.
I love that.
Yeah.
Now, and if people want to work with you, whether you do programs for architects to be able to certify in conscious home design, correct? Or as a client
Sure.
wanting to work with you, is that also the best way for people to contact you?
So I have projects all over the country, coast to coast, top to bottom, everywhere. I can certainly do projects, whether they want to design a whole home or whether they just want to pick my brain and have a private consultation. You can reach out to me about that on my website, conscioushomedesign.com. Yeah, absolutely.
I love it. Did you have any?
Well, Taylor, what I'll say is reading your book, it was easy, simple steps. It was very easy read. And going through the workbook, I mean, I love the core values. I mean, I just like the book. And just talking to you, you just make a whole lot of sense. So thanks for joining.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.